All right. Thank you very much for having me. And one of the things I would just want to point out is my profession for sure is writing and multimedia. Being that I do, have been working in video for quite a long time, it's something I had some of the assets and the experience. And I think what I'd like to do with this workshop here is to is not really to tell you what trailers are in the sense of all the details about it. You can find that on anywhere essentially. What's a bumper, what's a stinger, what's this and that. That's really kind of not quite as important as seeing maybe a case study about why you choose to do the things that you do in a trailer. So you can hear a lot again about definitions, but that's probably the true help is kind of maybe dissecting the video that I did, so you can really see choices and the thought process behind it. So when it's your turn to do something like this, you can then have the process in which to best to utilize the work that you have. So let me just quickly run through a couple of different types of video to promote your work. And Jerry, like you were mentioning before, we as writers come in contact with a lot of different things at work. And for example, concept video is something, for example, if we might be working on a project, we've got some artwork and some initial, maybe like a pilot, we may put a short little concept video together to help fund it and sell it. And this was something that I did with a couple of different animators. We have standalone content. This is an animation I worked on, and really the whole thing was they needed an animation showing how this big giant laser worked. And so everything was self-contained. All the writing was just part of this one video. An author interview, that's pretty straightforward. Testimonial, sometimes we get asked to speak about something. In this particular case, I was asked to comment about an inconvenient truth, which I had some kind of really good connection with. Companion content. This is something this is for a story I did for the Monterey County Weekly, and it was about a little mini submarine. So I did some filming in the background, which we then used to accompany the story. And then finally, the trailer. Now, there's many more different types of videos, of course, but this is trying to give you a feel for what's out there and what we can potentially draw from when it comes time to do our trailer. One of the huge differences, obviously, between a book trailer and a movie trailer is, a movie trailer is actually moving pictures. There's video. In fact, they're taking things they shot already, which is the best of the best. You've got your stars, you've got your characters, you've got all this great content, and they put it in a small little trailer. We have words, and the idea is that through our words, you imagine what's happening. And so we don't have this giant, vast treasure trove of amazing images for our book trailer. So we have to be really smart and really cautious about how we go and proceed to do a book trailer, because we are still a very visual society, and no one is going to sit there and say, well, that writer is a writer. They probably don't have a lot of good content, so we're going to give them a break because their content isn't really that interesting. We really still have to compete in a very visual world, and so it's really critical, the decisions when we make a trailer, we really have to put our best foot forward. It's like your cover. If you have a crappy cover, no matter how good your book is, it's not going to do well. And the trailer, if you've got a crappy trailer and something that maybe, you've got some grandkids who know, or some kids who know how to do, movie making a little bit more than you, it doesn't mean that they're a professional, right? So you have to be really careful on that. And because really, movie trailers are book trailers are so shareable, it'll really be potentially the first look that people will have of your work. And you want it to reflect well. So of course we're going to get into book trailers. So really quickly, when you're doing a book trailer, what are you going to do with it? So here's a couple places, and again, there's tons of ways to place your trailer and what to do with it. But I'm just giving you a handful to kind of get you kind of thinking about it. And so obviously on your web page, you can see here that I also have another video here. It gives you a little bit different side of the writer or the story. So think of these video trailers as a companion to other videos that you might have. Using social media, you can share a trailer. I recently did an event for the space show, and in the announcement of the event, if you look at the very second line, I put my book trailer. So again, we know people's attention spans are short, and they don't necessarily have a lot of time to sit there and describe to the world what it is. There's a quick link there. They click it, bang, they see what the story is about. Same thing with sending an email. I let some people know about it, and really up front on the top of the email, I wanted to make sure that I had a link there so they didn't have to read a huge description. They can go right to that trailer if they wanted to. And then this is an interesting thing too, and you guys might really try to get inventive with what you do with your trailers and your work. Now, I had recently done a podcast where I talked about all these things that I saw, but it's a podcast and they can't see anything. So I put together this little web page that had a listing of all the different things I talked about, so you can click on it and see the photo or the video. And of course, I put a link on there for my trailer. I hope you guys got a chance to see the trailer that I did. I'm gonna play it once more for you guys, just because we're gonna start dissecting it. Really kind of take a look at all the different elements, try to think about the sound, where the soundtrack is coming in, and these images are not thrown in there randomly. What you see here are all the visual elements that make up the trailer. There's 27 of them. And really, what we can do is, again, they're not arbitrary. And a trailer is like a mini movie. If you think about a movie or even a book, you can really divide it up into the classic 3-act structure. And that's kind of what I did here for the trailer here. And so for the very first act, I'm only having one scene here. And usually when you have a 3-act structure, the first act is about a quarter, the second act is about half, and the third act is about the last quarter. So my entire first act is essentially one scene that runs for 8.5 seconds and has a lapse time of 8.5 total seconds because it just started. My next act is Act 2, the confrontation or the escalation, and the majority and the bulk of the visuals are in this. Now you might seem that this is kind of a little bit off balance because, wow, I only had one scene in Act 1 and Act 2 has got all these other scenes. But really what's happened here is Act 2 has got 24 scenes, but most of these scenes are only less than a second. It's a montage. Remember how I talked about we don't have video of our characters in these great spots doing what our book is telling us. So I'm using the assets that I happen to have from my book, which are these photographs. And so what I decided to do is to use a photo montage to kind of create the action and tell some of the story. So here again, I have 24 actual scenes. Most of them are less than a second. A few are about 2 seconds long. And now 34.5 seconds have elapsed into the trailer. Then we get to the resolution, the climax. Again, in this case, only one scene. It's a longer scene compared to the rest also. It's 5.5 seconds, which brings my entire trailer in terms of the content to 40 seconds. Now, of course, after that action, after those 3 acts, we want to make sure people know about the book. We have our end credits. And so here I have 11 seconds for the end credits that show the viewers, a little bit about the book and where they could find it. A total of 51 seconds now has elapsed. My whole entire video is 51 seconds. And we're going to get into some of the data soon and why why some of this is important to kind of have something shorter and sweeter. Because the other thing too is, the longer your video is, the more content you have to develop for it. And creating videos costs time and money to do. So every second that goes by is a lot of expense and work. So if you can condense things, number one, it makes it more cost effective for you. But again, people have short attention spans anyway, so it also helps in that way. So now let's dig a little bit deeper into the scenes. So in Act 1, again, I have this one scene and I show 3 different times on it. And what I'm really doing is I want to show immediately what the world of the book is. And I do this by coming in to this one photograph of Ushuaia Bay in the tip of Argentina. You can see on the top right, there's a port there, and maybe there's some mystery, but instead of zooming in, I actually pull out. And I'll explain a little bit why I do that. But the other thing I do is I create this epic statement. And I want, since I don't, again, have my actors having dialogue or anything like that, I want to set the tone. I want to let people know that there's something happening. You know, getting to Antarctica became the adventure of his lifetime. Okay. And then I have the ellipses there, which obviously indicates there's going to be something else. But sometimes ellipses mean like, is there a twist coming up? So this is a little bit of a hook. So very quickly on, I show this to get the reader, the viewer, to see this really quickly. So I'm giving a lot of information really quickly, really early on. Now, as I start to move away from the bay, again, this one scene is 8.5 seconds. I start to move away from the bay, and now you can start to see the mountains closer in the foreground, and you can see more of the mountains in the background. And you're like, wow, this is there's something coming on. This is maybe potentially foreshadowing of what this whole book and this trailer is going to be. And then instead of doing any kind of crazy dissolve, you have to remember that there's a soundtrack happening right now, and right now it's kind of like this kind of nice, kind of tranquil, kind of maybe a little bit interesting music, but the tempo and the intensity is not super there yet. Once this act ends, we do a jump cut, which is straight into the other scene, and the music picks up right away. And this, again, is the confrontation, the escalation part. So I basically have divided up these different scenes, which is now, again, 24 scenes total for 26 seconds. I've divided them up into basically 3 sequences. And the first 2 sequences I show here. So sequence 1 is the set of 5 photographs. And we've now just pulled back away from the bay, right? And we've shown this potential world that's all around. But now we want to go straight into the action. We want to go straight into where things are happening. And this is ultimately, this book is about a trip to Antarctica to study climate change and wildlife issues, and things happen and crazy things happen at sea. So we want to get on our boat. So we get into the harbor, then we get onto the wharf, then we jump onto the boat, and now we're setting sail, and lo and behold, we see this cool iceberg, and it looks like it's a window. It's like a door going into this strange world. And what do we see very next? We see, wow, we have some emperor penguins and some chinstrap penguins. You know, this looks pretty cool. Now, mind you, this whole thing took 4.5 seconds. That's it. So a little bit less than a second per photograph. Sequence 2 now, again, you don't want, just like a book or a movie, if everything is just nice and consistent and evenly paced, there's no drama, there's no back and forth, there's no conflict, it gets boring pretty fast. So the very next thing after I show these nice, lovely penguins over here and how nice the world is and pink and beautiful, right? We cut to, wow, the bow of the boat, and it's surrounded by icebergs. What the heck is happening, right? Wow, the bow of the boat, is that really an iceberg that it's coming to hit? Yes, it is. Okay, so I have this little light preserver here just to kind of play around with people, some falling ice, all right, still playing around with people, and then these rubber boats, we're ashore. Now, just like the movie trailers, things don't have to actually be in any type of actual true sequence to what the movie or the book is. So some of these are taken out of sequence, which is completely fine. And it's really, this is only 5.5 seconds long, but you're really just trying to get people's, attention and juices flowing. So again, sequence 2, that's a lot of icebergs. Now I get to sequence 3, which is now 16 seconds. Now the first 2 sequences, if you think again about an act 2, it's about half of the full piece. The first half of act 2 was my sequences 1 and 2. Now my second half of act 2 is the sequence 3. So what I did here is now I'm like, okay, great. Now let's take a look at the fluffy, cute critters. Let's take a look at some of the nice kind of wide open eyes and the cool things that people are kind of interested in. Now, the idea is I want to pick maybe not necessarily my favorite photographs, maybe not the most interesting photographs, but the ones that translate to the most people the quickest. The things that aren't like nuanced, arcane. People don't have to say, I wonder what the heck that is, right? So things have to be crystal clear. And so the other thing too is you also can kind of play around, not necessarily play around, but here's where you can actually throw in like some subtleties in it that maybe people may not get, directly, but it might be in their subconscious as we start moving along. So for example, I start sequence 3 off with penguins on land. Okay, great, that's a static shot. Very next thing, again, a very quick change in pace, the penguin swimming. Then I have a penguin chick over here who's got all this nice warm down feathers, and he looks really comfortable. And then I have this penguin chick coated in mud that's basically infused with krill from basically the food that other penguins have eaten. This is not a very pleasant penguin, right? Then what's better than seals? Seal babies, right? So we got some seal babies over here. Okay, that's interesting. We've got some funny penguins marching through some stuff over here. Again, we have a baby elephant seal with these beautiful black eyes. They get really, really, really ugly very fast. So this is about the best they get. Then I got some crevasses over here on a glacier. And then I have this chick over here. Again, another cute, cute animal. Now this is again where I start to introduce some elements of the danger and the possibilities of the conflict. And now I do that with these crevasses over here. And the way I situate it between these two is I got, again, this cute little seal over here kind of looking towards that direction, and this cute little albatross chick looking in that direction. Most people probably won't notice it, but maybe in deep down they might. The next I kind of get to a king penguin here. This guy's marching along the water, and then I have a whale tail. And to me, I'm like, well, you know what? That foot over there is like the foot of a whale, and guess what? We're really not all that different. Got the blue ice. This is crumbled off of a glacier. We've got this rowboat that's covered in mud from a volcano. All right, and this is in Deception Island. Again, keeping with some of the themes of mud and kind of, it could be pretty unpleasant. And then I kind of end this act with one of my favorite photographs, and I actually have a video clip of this in the Multimedia Travel Companion that I hope we'll have time to talk about later. But anyway, this over here is you've got this little scene of these Gentoo penguins building a nest. And it looks really nice because this one Gentoo is actually, helping his mate and his chicks build a nest. But he's actually stealing rocks from other nests. So, you have to, again, I think kind of what I was hoping with this particular one is you have to kind of sometimes look under the surface sometimes, because not everything is what it appears to be. So now we get to Act 3, the resolution of the climax, right? So remember, I had that epic statement in the front. I said getting to Antarctica became the adventure of his lifetime, but this is not simply a book just about critters, right? and it's a novel. It entails, you know, interpersonal, you know, connections between people, and this is really where I put the twist in. And instead of just going along with saying this is an adventure, I said, but then he found her, as if all that amazing stuff we just saw was just didn't count anymore. Now, I am not going to explain this any more than that. This is my hook. This is what I'm trying to show to somebody who doesn't know what this is about. I want them to get interested in it. Again, we're not here to give a synopsis of what it is because we don't want to give away any of the details. So now we come up with the end card, or the very end of our trailer, and this is a really critical thing to decide on what to do. Because again, as writers, we probably tend to overwrite at first, and that's probably the worst thing you want to do. You want to keep things as absolute minimum. And 11 seconds is a really, really long time compared to the whole time of the trailer. It's 20% of the trailer stuck on essentially on book covers and some minimal text. But they say that you want to have enough time to read everything twice at a normal pace, right? And my work over here is episodic, and I don't want to have to say in text it's episodic. The covers do that. I don't want to have to say all these descriptive things about the different names and this and that. I want to have the images do that. So really the limited text I have is, it's multimedia, serial novel by Dan Lenihan. And then my choice of websites. We can't list everything. I mean, as much as we want to list all the possibilities, I decided to point people to my multimedia traveling companion, because that's really the hub of this book in a way. It can show people where to buy it. It could show people the videos, the photos, all that stuff, and it's for free. So there's really the least barrier to people looking at stuff by going to this one website I give. I don't even give my homepage, because my homepage has got a lot of other projects too. So I really had to think about where I wanted to direct people from this. So the next really critical part of this, and I think sound design is one of those things, if you don't notice it, that's a good thing. But when you start to notice it and it's grating on you and you're like, you know, then that's a problem. And it's kind of probably the same that goes with the visuals. If everything went really, really smooth and nothing stood out to you and clunked, then you know that you probably had got this 3-act structure, again, which is very natural to us. You know, you probably had it working, right? So what I did for this particular case, and there's a lot of different ways to get music, but what I did is I went to a website. It's kind of like Shutterstock for photographs, and there's all kinds of these websites where you can actually get the assets to use for your videos. In this particular case, I used premiumbeat.com. I went to the website and I'm like, I need to find the perfect score for this trailer. So you go to your website, you can see all the different genres, and in fact, they even have something called trailer. I don't think they weren't showing this when I actually got my video a while back, but you don't have to necessarily go to the trailer section. You can actually come up with any of these things to add to the soundtrack. So what I did was I did a search, and I'm like, I wanted to do things like adventure, you know, epic, you know, romance, you know, and even sailing, because we're actually sailing. And so kind of the theme of my trailer was kind of this sailing thing. So when I put my search in for sailing, these are all the songs I got. And then if you look down below, you can see the waveform. So you can kind of see how things intensify. Over here is really where the music changes. This is kind of like, again, where I was going with Act 1, which is nice and tranquil, and all of a sudden it gets really loud, and there's drums and there's horns and there's all kinds of adventure, you know, sounding, you know, instrumentation. So I was able to kind of take a look at all the different options there. And so from here, what I did was I downloaded a bunch of previews. And so I was able to take my time and listen to the ones I liked the best. Now, just because you like something the best doesn't mean it's going to work with the material that you have. So what you're going to do is you're going to have to spend a little time kind of plugging in things and testing things out to see what actually truly works. Now, all these tracks, you know, can be, you know, I think they show you the time on these things. They're roughly about 2.5 minutes or so. And so what you can even do is you can take these tracks and cut them up and use the pieces that you want. And that's kind of what I did. Without making the song sound horrible, you can actually, you know, chop it up. So once I decided on mine, Epic Sale, I got actually, you know, bought the license to use it. Now, one thing I would caution everybody to really make sure about this. In this day and age of social media, it seems like everybody thinks anything that is on the computer is free to use. And the last thing you guys want to do is have unlicensed material that does not belong to you, that someone owns, that you think you could use just because it shows up on Facebook or the internet. That is not the case. Imagine your work out there and people freely using it on their product, on their projects that were making money. You would not be happy either. So I would really, again, be very cautious about making sure the content you use is either absolutely entirely generated by you or it's public domain, and you can actually prove it, right? Where it's got the paperwork, you know, to be able to be proven that it's public domain, or you license it. Again, goes to the expense of things. The more stuff you add, the longer your video is, the more it's going to cost. So this is a really complicated looking slide I have here. This is something that maybe most of you are probably not going to deal with, or maybe you have dealt with some video editing software. But the purpose of this is really what I wanted to show you here is, if you look at this pink row over here, right, this is all my clips. This is all the scenes that I have on here. Up here is the timeline in the green from 0 to 51. So you can kind of see, again, my opening scene here takes up this amount of space. If the blocks are wider, that means it's just they're longer. And then the important thing that I really want to point out to you is this, is you have a waveform of the music. This is the ups and downs and the intensity and the different sounding and different sounds of this of the soundtrack I used. So here again, you can see that in the very opening scene, it's kind of a little bit lower in intensity. It kind of dips down, kind of like you're just kind of catching your breath, and all of a sudden, bang, it shoots up. And that's where I start my second act, right? Then over here, if you look where the I have the end credits, I stop the adventurous music over here, and now we just got this simple fade out on a piano sounding, right? But there's a little bit more to that. So let's kind of take a little bit deeper look into it. So when I'm designing this, when I designed the length of the individual clips, right, I did a couple different things. Number one, I wanted to mix it up because you don't want to have everything 1 second, 1 second, 1 second, 1 second. It's nice to see a variation. So if you look over here, my longest type of scenes in Act 2 are about 2 seconds. And it's this ice falling, right? I really wanted to focus on the movement of the ice falling. But other than that, everything else here is shorter than a second. Again, it's a photo montage. But the other thing you'll notice is I've lined it up to the soundtrack. And you can see as this thing's going up in peaks, wherever there's a real big peak, that's where my jump cut is, right? That's how I line these things up. So that's part of the sound design, and that's why it's real important to kind of be able to play with this stuff as you're picking your content, because you know you might just get a first draft, and I went through several drafts for sure, and you just have to keep fine-tuning it. The important thing is get feedback. Get feedback from hopefully people who are in the business, right? The last thing you want to do is show it to people who are just going to say, yeah, that's great, yeah, that's great, yeah, that's great, without giving you proper criticism on this stuff, because this is you're going out to the real world, and as you guys know, people on social media in the real world are always really nice and kind in however they deal with comments to things that they don't like, right? So really, you want to try to get the best kind of feedback you can from anybody who's got real experience. In fact, obviously in the work I've done, I work with a bunch of video editors, and so people who are far, far better than me, working on any type of video stuff. And I throw this stuff back to them, and so you kind of get some things you didn't see and stuff just like you were going to do on your writing. You get feedback from different readers, the general audience type, the experts on content, all this types of stuff. So I'm going to play the trailer again.
One question so far. Is there a reason that you use the 4:3 aspect ratio rather than 16:9?
No, I think it's just it went with the photos, really. Most of my photos have that aspect ratio already, and so it goes back to you can get as complicated as you want, the aspect ratio they're talking about is whether it looks more rectangular or more square. As standards change, these aspect ratios change. To me, instead of trying to catch whatever is the current fancy of this, because don't forget, this trailer is going to live for a long time, focus on the assets that you have or the capabilities that you have first and use what you have. Now, if I was creating everything from scratch, I would certainly want to use the most modern or most preferred aspect ratios. But even as YouTube has changed over the years, they've gone to different, video services gone to different preferred aspect ratios. So my advice is, unless you got tons and tons of money, use what you got to the best available, that you have, essentially.
Let's see. Question about the book, and is the Princess book itself also multimedia?
Yeah, so one of the things is the amazing part about it is when you're reading along in these episodes, and when I did my beta read, and I gave my beta readers, it was a book club actually, that took my manuscript and read that as their book club. People were saying, oh, I really love all these descriptions about penguins, and I kept going online and I wanted to see more and more. Well, the way I have the episodes designed now is that as you're reading along, there'll be a little tiny icon that you can click to see exactly what I'm talking about. So that multimedia travel companion has got over 200 photographs. It's got the nonfiction technical kind of captions like you might see in a magazine. It's got links to the video. It's got links to all this content. So someone reading the episode can even see the maps. They can see the songs that we're talking about. They can see all of these things in a multimedia way. So you have to buy, obviously, the book itself, but the multimedia website is just like anybody's website. It's free and anybody can look at it. In fact, anybody here who can just explore, the multimedia travel companion right away. But in short, yes, the episodes I have are linked. So now here's a really, really critical thing, and this is called metadata. And this is something as writers, whenever we're starting, even for search engine optimization, if you have a website, this stuff is really critical. This is the things that are embedded in your website to help the search engines find who you are, how relevant you are when people are searching. And it's really, I think, important to not let your web designer or your video person be the one in full control of what gets said, because they simply don't know your work as well as you do, right? So really quickly, I'm hosting this on YouTube. Obviously, my title. I want my title here, but I also want to make sure, again, you always think of a keyword, right? So here's my title, but I want to put book trailer on there to let people know it's a book trailer, right? That might help search engine optimization. The description, again, there's a limit on the amount of words you can use for your description, but think about this. When you look at a YouTube video, you only see the first 3 lines or so, unless you hit more. My suggestion is that if there's something that you want to make sure people see, have that up front, because the chances that they're going to hit more are really, really slim. All right? So what I do is, here, I give the link on where people can buy my series first, my preferred place, right? They can buy it in lots of places, but I'd rather push them to here. My multimedia travel companion comes next. And then my third line, which will be shown, I'm basically saying, based on true experiences, Antarctica, Argentina, and the title. All right. So I had probably try to squeeze in the most important elements possible. All right. The next thing you'll see is thumbnails, for example. You get to choose the thumbnail from YouTube, for example, but they give you a very limited number. And again, I want, you guys need to think about the ramifications of things. Now, again, we've got an option of the really cute seal, and then we have the option of the island in Act 3, where they've got the text on it. Now, to me, having the text on it is ridiculous, because that's my punchline. I don't want to have a thumbnail that's my punchline. That gives away the whole, the whole kind of magic of the trailer. Then my other option is a seal here. Okay, oh yeah, it looks really cute. We know people like cute things, but is that really representative of everything I'm trying to show in the trailer? So I think probably out of these three things, showing the drama, the action that you're seeing of people looking over the side of a ship at icebergs, that's probably the most dramatic action for a thumbnail. That's what people are going to see. So I think that would be for sure is a no-brainer. Then you've got a couple of some audience questions. Obviously, this trailer was not made for kids, in the sense that it's not a kid video. I mean, I didn't actually make it for kids. YouTube wants to know that, but obviously there's nothing on there that is bad for, in my trailer anyway. There's nothing that's age restrictive. Here's the other thing that's really important. And again, I've worked with companies that, again, you have web people do will load the project that you put in there, and they'll put 1 or 2 keywords on there. And they're not, again, experts in that video. They don't know the nuances. My suggestion is to put everything you can think of that's in your book in there. And imagine if you just put, say it's a love story, and it's set in, it's a love story. You've got love somewhere. I think we have love somewhere. Yeah, love. It's a novel, and there's travel. How many books out there have love? How many novels have love, travel, and novel in it? Can you imagine how many things would be searched? How many results that would turn up? You want to be able to distinguish yourself. I want someone to say, I want seals, I want love, and I want Malbec wine. Chances are there's not a lot of people who have got keywords that are seals, Malbec wine, and then love in there. That helps me rise to the top. So the keywords are really important to think about that. So metadata is something that not just for videos, you should be thinking about these types of things for your websites as well. All right, so quickly I'm going to get on some data. This is just, watching the data is really important because it helps you learn about how your video is doing. This particular case shows me in the last 60 minutes, in the last 48 hours, how many hits I'm getting. And I have my top 4 showing videos over here. Again, I could look out a little bit longer. This is 28 days. You can see I've got a total of 5 different videos, each in different colors. And I can see when people are watching these particular videos on a given day. And in case May 4th, I see that I had 7 people look at the trailer, 2 people look at this caterpillar video, and then there's a wandering albatross courtship dance video that people looked at. And you know, these peaks over here might mean something, so that's why it's important to look at this. Now, I'm going to look back even further at more data. I'm going to look at the life of the trailer. And then you could see, wow, there's a giant, huge spike up here for this trailer, the number of views. Well, this happens to be, you know, when I launched the trailer. And then you've got these other giant peaks, and these are actually closer, more related to when I've actually done something. So I kind of call these like, you know, like deposits. This is my terminology, or just maybe a way to think about it. You're basically investing in here. You've done an event, you're active, and these are like discrete events. They don't happen naturally all the time. You have to put some input in, right? So each time you put an input in, you hope you get a spike in people looking at your trailer. The other thing is, the other stuff you've got are more of the random, the passive, you know, the continuous stuff. And I call that's like my bank account interest. I've already put my money in. I'm hoping that the money I put in is going to start earning and doing some work for me where I don't have to do anything, right? Remember, we're talking about all these things about search engine optimization and all that stuff like that. We want people to just find our work by themselves. And you can see, you know, all that flat level, these little bumps over here, that's people running across my trailer. In some ways, I have no idea how that's happening. But look at the interesting number on here. If I'm to add up the numbers, about 57% or a little bit more than half of the views come from me doing something, and about a little bit less than half come from other people doing something. And maybe they were reading my book and they wanted to look at the videos associated to the book. But still, I wasn't the one pushing it, and that's really important. This looks a little complicated, but the purple over here is, again, just our hits, okay? I did another graph on here, and this is the duration. This is the most critical part, because guess what? People don't have to watch the whole video. They can actually turn it off. So this is a good indication of how much people are actually watching the video. And I'm going to zoom in, and you can see it a little bit better, right? So you can see where I'm showing the cursor. That's one person who watched the video, and this blue line up here basically shows how long they watched it. This is the time over here, right? And then the purple, that's the number of hits, right? So everybody seems to be at this level. Well, why is that? Okay, let's take a look. The full duration of my video is right here. So that means every blue line over here, that means these people have watched the whole thing. But my average duration, right, when you compare everybody over the history of this video, they're only looking at about this much of my video. And why is this important, right? Because guess what? I have a title card that shows the information about my book. If people aren't getting there, they're not seeing the information about my book. So it's really critical. So I'll show you a couple other points on this. Again, in terms of the start of the video over here and the end of the video over here. Over here is where the first act ends. The second act ends here. The third act ends here. So you could see this person over here, they stopped watching somewhere in the middle of Act 2. They never even got to the payoff, my punchline, right? And then you can see other people, of course, have gotten way past that. This shows all those lines together. I'm going to show you something on audience retention. You could see, again, if you look at all the way over here, this is the start now of the video, and this is the end of the video. So by basically 6 seconds into my video, I only have 90% of the people who started looking at it. And when I get to 16 seconds, now I'm down to 88% of the people who clicked on my trailer and watched it. 76%, 72%, 71%, and it keeps falling to the end, which obviously seems pretty natural, right? Now, there'll be a lot of people who might see it to the end, and there'll also be a lot of people who click on it and like, what is this? I didn't mean to click on this, and then click right away, right? So how do we diagnose what this is? And this is really important. Again, this data shows how well our video is performing. You can see this flat line means people are watching it from the beginning to the end. That is great. That's the best scenario. The gradual decline like this obviously shows that people are fading away, which is what we naturally expect, right? There's no mystery there. Now, if you get these little bumps, you can kind of see a little bump, and there's a couple little tiny bumps here. You can't really see it well. It means people are like, wow, that's interesting. I'm going to rewind and see that again. That's a positive thing. Now, if you see dips, that's like, I'm skipping over this stuff. I'm skipping ahead. That's not so good. And then if you see this, where all of a sudden there's a giant drop off, that means people, there's reaching a point where no one is getting past, and you have a fundamental problem with your video. So these two things, if you start seeing this, you've got some fundamental problems with your trailer, and you should be watching this stuff to make sure you know that, because if you've invested a lot of money in, it's easier to fix this stuff sooner than later. So I'm showing you this now. This is called relative retention. Now, if you look back at this other thing, I'm slowly dropping down. Is this normal? Is this a normal thing? Well, if I compare myself to all of the other videos in YouTube of the same length, I can see my retention compared to other people. And you could see this line is above average, right? And that's a pretty good thing. And not only that, you can see how it's going up and down. It actually is kicking up towards the end, which makes me really, really happy, because that's where my information is about the book. And again, you can see here how this retention tracks to the scenes. Here, right here, that's my first act right here. This over here, where people are rewatching stuff, this is where I jump into the ship and we see icebergs and things are cool. This over here is where we see cute albatrosses and stuff like that. And we see a bump again where my payoff is, which is good. I'm really glad that there's a bump at this late stage of the game, because that's where my joke, that's where my payoff is. And I want people to have heard that. Think of the trailer as something that's part of your all your portfolio of material. So you have here, you see this and you're like, whoa, this is the last 48 hours, the last 60 minutes. We've seen a ton of hits. This is a video, another video I have, and it's of caterpillars. It's these crazy caterpillars, and they move together like a giant blob. And it's like my nemesis, because I have this trailer that I worked on so hard, and every once in a while, this caterpillar thing goes viral. Now, we all want our material to go viral. We really don't know how it happens, but again, we try to pay attention to the data here. Now, although this looks really, really great in terms of how many hits this thing had, you take a look at the long-term thing, and these are the invasions over here. This is my caterpillar videos. I'm like, I wish that was my trailer, because my trailer's over here. But when I look a little bit closer at the data, I can see that my duration, my video is still actually almost all the way through, on average, my act 1, 2, and 3, where this video falls off really quickly. About 80% of my video is watched on average, which means there's a tremendous amount of people watching it, the full thing. So I think at this stage of the game, we probably don't have much time to go into multimedia. As you can see, the complexities of a trailer are there. And I kind of threw a lot of stuff at you really quickly, but I hope it's a good starting point for where you guys can go and find more information about making a trailer. I'll zip through these things really fast. This is the Multimedia Travel Companion. You could find that stuff on my website and kind of search into it. My publisher is doing a cool thing about a give back, so you can get the complete series for only $2 up until the end of the month, and you get the whole series and access to the free, of course, multimedia travel companion. So with that, I'd be happy to finish, answer any other questions.
Great, thank you so much. Wow, I was taking furious notes because I have not done a trailer yet, and I am going to seriously dive into it. And I really appreciated the metrics that you have on the other end and explaining like how you can use that to make things better and understand what's going on. We have a bunch of questions from people, so I will just kind of read them out and you can answer. Some are pretty quick, others may be a little more in depth. But the first one we got was, I guess it's a pretty straightforward technical one, which is what video editing software are you using?
I use Premiere.
Okay. And then we have a question about, do you use mostly video clips and are you using camera moves on your stills? That's
a really great question. Okay, so when I went to Antarctica, I actually went to Antarctica. All those photographs you see are mine. I didn't go there to make movies, and I went there in 2006 and 2007. And my whole thing was I was going to write. I was going to take notes, and you had mentioned you got a speaker coming up talking about travel writing. My job was to see as much as possible, and so I had a small point and click that had very early on. I mean, I bought this camera in the early 2000s when digitals were just starting to go up to happen, when video was just starting to add to these small compact cameras. I was in remote places. I needed to have a camera that I could have a couple batteries, put in my pocket in a plastic bag. So the video quality I have, which I use on my website, is fine for my multimedia stuff because it is what it is, it's footage. However, I could not use, even my really favorite videos, I could not use them on the trailer because they just weren't the right quality. If people saw that, they'd immediately think my work was just done by a novice, right? But it's the video I captured back then is really important footage, but it just doesn't belong in a trailer. Everything you see is from the photographs I took doing camera movements. Basically, with video editing software, you can pull in, zoom out. You could pan left and right. You can do all kinds of crazy things. Everything you see was done by moving a photograph.
Great, thanks. I know, unfortunately, we can't go back and use today's technology in a journey from 10 years ago.
Correct.
12 years ago. Great. Okay, here's a question about the amount of time it took you to do this. How much time did you put into making this, Dan? And the guess from this person who had the question is 40 hours? So.
Yeah, no. Yeah, no, it's a hard thing to say how much, but I probably put a good month in. I mean, mind you, again, my job is not a professional video editor, right? And so I'm sure that there are people, and I was learning on the way too, right? So if you were to hire somebody to do this, obviously it's going to take them a lot less time. But the other thing too is, you get what you put in, right? This was my big work. I published other books, but this is something I've been working on essentially since the early 2000s. It's the most important work of my life. I'm going to make sure, obviously perfection is the enemy of progress. At some point in time, you have to cut that umbilical cord, but I really want to put as much effort in. And the process of getting feedback from people, all that stuff takes time, and you really need to put it in because, again, a video is now, a video that you're calling your trailer is now more important than the cover of your book. Great. If it's done poorly, it could really sink things.
Yeah. Yes. Very, very true these days. I think we have time for one more quick question, which matches up perfectly with how many more questions we have, which is one. And that is, do you have a way to see if all of this hard work that you put in translated into book sales?
Yeah, that is hard to say. I mean, I think I showed you guys a lot of data, and I think what you can do is you can correlate stuff well. You can correlate to, now mind you, our world is so distracted. There are so many options for people to do things, right? how do you rise into in all this noise, right? And so we really have to be, we can't expect the world to come to us. You know, it just doesn't happen. You know, those are the fairy tales. Those are the, you know, made for TV movies that one person happened to. Most of us have to really slog to get people to notice our stuff. Understanding the data that I was showing you just for the video, that data applies to your website, that data applies to social media. And you could start to see, like, when you give a talk, you could start to see things, you know, you start to see more, you know, hits on your website, you see more hits on the trailer. Then you start to see, you can correlate that to, you know, when sales happen, you know, depending on the data you get from your publisher or the platform you're using. So I think you can for sure see connections. Now, it's not always the most, you know, you kind of have to learn how to read things, but that's all done by experience. The more you kind of geek out with the numbers, and I hope I kind of showed you a little bit how to do that, but again, we don't have a lot of time, and you can do a whole talk on just metadata and data for publishing and writers. That would be really helpful. But anyway, trying to see how that stuff aligns. Whenever you see a hit on your website, look at your videos and look at your sales and try to see how that correlates, because there certainly is a correlation.
Dan, thanks so much. For me, as I said, I was taking lots of notes and looking forward to diving in and possibly putting my own video up at some point. So.
Great.
Thank you so much, Dan. That was excellent.
This was fantastic. Thank you so much. A lot of information here. A lot of homework. Great.